What's up, everybody? I am gonna do some laundry here while we chat. Multitasking. You know, they say multitasking isn't a real thing. That you can't actually focus on two things at once. And I think for most things that's true. Right, like texting and driving. If you're focusing on the text, it's hard to focus on the driving, right? So you got to go back and forth, text, drive, text, drive, text, drive. And really, you're not multitasking, you're just splitting your attention between two tasks. But, in the case of doing my laundry, I think I actually am multitasking, because, like, it's such a mindless activity. I can just throw that boy the laundry in while I converse with you guys. Now, I can't interact with the comments, right? That would take too much attention. But anyways, how's everybody doing? Thanks for following Lead Paint Police. Thank you. What's up, Quick Jock? How are you? How is everybody doing? Yo, Eddie, how many miles do you run a day for cutting and wrestling? Not many. Running's hard on your knees, it's hard on your joints. I mean, running's good if you can run, you know, running's good for cardio and for weight loss, but, you know, I wrestle twice a day. And then if I need to get extra cardio workouts in, I like to do the bike, the Airdyne bike. So, not a ton. I used to run a lot when I was a weight class below what I am now. This live stream is brought to you by Tide Pods, by the way. Let's eat one. What was I saying? When I was a weight class below and I was like physically changing my body in terms of like muscle mass in order to be lighter, then I was running like once a day. Pretty much, but now I focus more on the actual wrestling, but right? Always tempted, LOL. I feel like they should make like candy Tide Pods. Like Tide Pods that are actually candy so you can eat them, but I guess that would be dangerous, you know, because then you teach your kids to eat Tide Pods, they might actually accidentally eat one. When the Tide Pod thing was when that was like a meme, there were so many stupid videos of people like actually eating them. Or I saw one guy smoking one. Like, bro. The shit that our generation will do for social media attention. Thoughts on Rev Left? I love the Rev Left podcast. That helped me get into Marxism. Yeah, Brett O'Shea seems like a good dude. Someone probably told them that we're a bunch of evil pat sock chauvinists, but I like them. Do you do jujitsu? I have in the past. I don't know. This is weird, but I had a dream about you. That is kind of weird, but not that weird. Like, hold on. Large corporations are cutting hours in the rural Midwest because the minimum wage increased to 14. Dang. Yeah, makes sense, though. The heck was I saying? What was I talking about? Someone having a dream about me. The people you see in your dreams are the faces that you see every day. Your brain can't invent new faces, so the people who show up in your dreams are people that you see, so it actually makes sense that I would pop up in your dream if you're watching my TikToks, but so not that weird. Hey mate, thanks for all you do for Palestine. You bet. Free Palestine all day. Yeah, that's something I've always talked about and something I'll never stop talking about. Every socialist, should stand with Palestine. It's not a difficult question. Thank you, SF Journey. Thank you for following. James Ray the other day, who's a pro-Palestinian creator, he said, what did he say? He's like, trust me. You don't like, Palestine is not a complicated issue. I've done the reading, and I can tell you it's a military occupation where one power, one country who has all the weapons and guns and the backing of the Western imperialists are bombing and slaughtering the people that they have under occupation. He's like, you can do all the reading you want, you can dive into it, but, the more that you read about the issue, the more you're going to see that's the case. The Palestinians are outmatched. They're resisting with stones and makeshift fireworks while they're being massacred, slaughtered, and starved by the Israeli occupation, who has state-of-the-art weapons from the Western military-industrial complex. And, since the G side kicked off, I've read like 7 or 8 books about Palestine. I just, have been super motivated. Like, what can I do to help? And yeah, the more you read, the more you learn, but the more simple you realize the issue is. The less nuanced you realize it is. You realize more and more that the people who are, acting as apologists for the Israeli apartheid regime and the Israeli occupation, that those people are apologists for apartheid and literal genocide and occupation. Like, you can't bomb civilians in a region that you have occupied, where you're keeping them in an open-air prison. That's horrific. That'd be like Germany under the reign of the painter in the 1930s and 40s, like bombing everybody in the Warsaw Ghetto. Literally. Gaza is a ghetto. Thank you for following, and thank you for the stickers that were sent earlier. I'm sorry I missed those. Appreciate that. What's wrestling style do you do? Greco, yeah. And also make sure to follow if you haven't already, and then like the stream. Like and share the stream. That helps boost us in the algorithm and stuff. Do you acknowledge that Candace Owens is a bigot? I don't know what she said. Probably. She's been a right-wing grifter for like 10 years now, so she's probably said something that I would say is bigoted at one point. I don't know because I don't follow Candace Owens that closely, but I would agree that she's a right-wing grifter, or that she was, at least. She was a conservative grifter. But on the issue of Palestine, Norman Finkelstein was able to appeal to her humanity. Norman Finkelstein said, Candace, you're an expecting mother. Look at what Israel's doing. They've taken the lives of now 13,000 children. And how do you feel about that as an expecting mother? That a place like Palestine, where 50% of the people there are under 18, are children, a place like that being occupied, blockaded, and bombed. And, the blockade part is an underrated part of what the Israeli occupation is doing, an under-talked about part, because they're stopping any trade in and out of Gaza. So that's been since 2006 and 7. I can't remember the date it was actually put on, but around that time. And that's collapsed the economy. That's made it so unemployment is at like 50%, and the only way that the Palestinians can earn money or stay alive is to get aid from groups like UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, with which the U.S. and Israel are now trying to cut off from funding. Or they have to travel into Israel proper. I know people in the West Bank do that. I don't know if people are allowed out of Gaza on work permits. I don't know how that works, but a lot of them travel into Israel proper, where there are like checkpoints, where if you're a Palestinian, if you're Arab, you'll be searched, whereas Jewish people can just go right on through. And that makes working in Israel proper really difficult. So the blockade is an underappreciated part of what Israel's doing and how horrific it is. They're starving these people out. But yeah, Candace Owens was like, I'm against that. She stood against that, and that was enough to lose her position at the Daily Wire, right? That was enough to lose her position in corporate media. The people, the people who had been paying her to grift and push these talking points, needed her to be pro-Israel. They couldn't stand even a little bit of dissent. It's the same thing with Tucker Carlson, right? Tucker Carlson starts questioning the establishment just a little bit. He becomes a little bit of an independent thinker and moves away from, blatant Fox News, anti-Russia, anti-China talking points, and he's gone. He gets fired. He gets canned. Well, the U.S. funds majority of UNRWA. Time for Arab countries to help Palestine. Yeah, I agree. I agree there. Arab countries have not been doing enough. Thank you for following, Ava. Thank you for the follow. Make sure to like and share the stream. Thoughts on populism? I think, populism is important. Populism is, there's right-wing populism where you have, Donald Trump, who I would say is mostly a charlatan, Zion Don, but he used what we would call populist rhetoric. So rhetoric, almost rhetoric related to class struggle is what you could call populist rhetoric. I'm going to bring your jobs back. I'm going to end the wars. I'm going to rebuild infrastructure. I'm going to lower your taxes, right? Things that working class people like. But as socialists and communists, we should use populist rhetoric as well, right? But we should explain, Donald Trump isn't actually going to change the system. He's not actually going to do systemic changes. He's a part of the system. He got rich in this system. And, one person can't use the executive office to systemically change the system in the way that we need, right? Socialism is the only way to actually improve the conditions of the working masses and end the wars, right? We have to get rid of the capitalist system. It's the capitalists, the multinational corporations, and the big banks who are the one, and the military-industrial complex are the ones pushing for all these wars, are the ones who want to use our country's resources on war rather than infrastructure, healthcare, education, blah, blah, blah. So I think populism is important, but we need populism plus socialism, not just right-wing populist charlatans. Or a dictator who is on our side, LOL. Socialism's the only way forward. Yes, direct democracy. Good. Harm the LGBTQIA. What does that even mean? Everybody can arm themselves anyways. You could go buy a gun at Walmart right now. At least I could. It's different in Illinois or other places. How long have you been with Midwestern Marks? How did you get into it? I founded Midwestern Marks out of college. I was the national tournament my senior year for wrestling. I qualified for it, and I was seeded 5th, I think. And it got canceled for COVID. It got canceled for the pandemic. So Carlos and I, after we graduated, it was still COVID. Everything was still shut down, and we just started doing Midwestern Marks. We started reading, publishing articles, publishing books, publishing our journal, and making videos and doing streams. And since then, Midwestern Marks has grown a lot. We've met a lot of awesome people, and it's... we've accomplished our goal for sure of, we founded Midwestern Marks to challenge the American left because we saw, tons of problems in the American left and how they functioned, with hyper-focus on identity politics, hyper-focus on individualism and not enough focus on class struggle and organizing based on class. And, you could even say not being populist, not appealing to the majority, as well as in 2020, especially before we had 4 years of Joe Biden and he became Genocide Joe, a lot of people were saying that Biden's awesome. A lot of leftists and so-called socialists were saying we're going to vote for Biden because Trump is a fash. Trump is a fascie, right? And more importantly, they said all of Trump's supporters are right-wing extremists who we shouldn't even talk to, or we shouldn't even try and relate to, or we shouldn't even, share socialist ideas with. And Carlos and I, who founded Midwestern Marks, we couldn't disagree with that more. We think we should reach out to everybody. We don't think anyone in this country is a basket of deplorables. We don't see most Trump people as right-wing extremists. We see them as disaffected working-class people who voted for Trump because they were fed up with the political establishment, and Trump lied to them. And Trump said, I'm going to bring your jobs back and end the war. So people were willing to take a chance on him rather than to go with the same old of Hillary Clinton. So that's why we founded Midwestern Marks, and that's why a lot of people on the left hate us. That's why if you go on Twitter, you'll see a lot of people talking about us like we're right-wingers, like we're grifters, we're just pretending to be socialists so we can grift. And people can think that if they want. I don't really give a shit because the left hasn't accomplished jack shit in America in the last 45 years. Just to tell it how it is, we've been seeing 40 years or 45 years of neoliberalism, especially since Ronald Reagan. The unions have been crushed. All forms of class struggle has been crushed. The fall of the Soviet Union really dampened the communist movement globally, right? The Communist Party USA essentially drifted towards liberalism after the fall of the Soviet Union. A lot of people, stopped reading and studying Marx, and basing our movements started, or the leftist movements moved away from class and started moving towards gender, sexuality, and identity liberation, rather than liberation of the working class and systemic change of the economic system. The material conditions of workers has gotten worse and worse. The cost of living has gone up and up and up, while our pay has gotten lower and lower and lower, and the left hasn't done anything about it, right? So if they hate me and Carlos for coming in and giving our critiques of the left and saying that, hey, maybe it's time to do things differently, well, too bad. If everybody on the left loved us and thought we were awesome and wanted to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again that hasn't been working, that would be bad. That would mean we're probably not doing our job. So, Alex, what's up? What's up, Lowell Overruled? How are you, buddy? Good to see you in here. Thanks for popping by. Big fan of what you do and your content. You're more funny than me, though. If I see a Lowell Overruled video, an Alex Peter video, there's like a 50% chance I'm going to cry about like the state of the justice system and life under capitalism, or like a 50% chance I'm going to laugh my butt off. Thoughts on corporatism. Corporatism is just a word that describes capitalism in its monopoly stage. Right? Capitalism inherently tends towards the concentration and accumulation of capital at the very top. Right? This is something that like Lenin was observing in 1917. He said we've reached a new stage of capitalism where big banks and monopolies control everything, which of course describes not only the American economy, but really the global economy outside of a handful of I guess what you could describe as anti-imperialist or anti-Western countries. Everything's dominated by the big banks, World Bank, IMF, and multinational corporations. And, that's just the natural development of capitalism. That's just the natural tendency of capitalism to tend towards accumulation and the concentration of capital. So what, like, libertarians will say is, this isn't capitalism, this isn't real capitalism, this is corporatism, this is crony capitalism. If we had real capitalism, then everything would work perfect. And it's like, no, real capitalism doesn't just stay the same. It doesn't just stay in this equilibrium where everything's perfect, right? Capitalism tends towards accumulation. If you're a capitalist, you're going to try and dominate the market and buy out your competition. And the more you do that, the more wealth you're going to have, and the more you're going to accumulate, and the more you can expand, right? So monopolies are naturally forming in a free market system. Free markets always become their opposite, which are monopolized markets. So you can't fight corporatism without fighting capitalism. You got to fight the system at its core. Thoughts on Candace Owens being fired from the Daily Wire? Great question. Be sure to like and share the stream, by the way, everybody. Do you have a girlfriend? No, not at the moment. I have been talking to a girl for like 200 days, though. But we live far away, so it's sad. So, I don't know. I'll see her in a few weeks, though. She's really cool. I like her a lot. Now I'm distracted. What was I talking about? Capitalism is about closing the market. The free market doesn't exist under capitalism. That's a good way of putting it. You're so cool. Thank you. Candace Owens. Yeah, Candace Owens. I think Candace Owens, she's been a right-wing media personality for a while. She was groomed, from a young age to be a right-wing media personality. Obviously, the right wing loves to tokenize different identity groups. Thank you, Mark, for the rose. They love a guy like Dave Rubin who's like, yeah, I'm gay, but I'm a conservative because the Republicans have it figured all out. Or Candace Owens being a black woman, she became the leader of Blexit, the black exit of the Democratic Party, and she was working for Republican-affiliated, conservative organizations. Thank you, John, for the roses. Appreciate that. So they the implication behind Brexit leaving the Democratic Party, was to go to the Republican Party. Right? So she was pretty much just acting as a standard pundit for the Republican Party, for the American GOP. Thank you, Mr. Fong, for the finger hearts. But she's, gotten smarter over the years. And that was revealed like when you saw her talk about global warming on Joe Rogan's podcast, right? Joe Rogan pushed back on her a little bit. This was like 8 years ago. He's like, but there is ecological degradation, right? There are things that we're doing to destroy the planet when we should be conserving it. And Candace was basically just saying, I don't believe that. I haven't done enough research, but I don't believe that. I don't believe climate change is real. And Joe's like, well, why would you say that if you haven't researched it? And it's because Candace knew what she was supposed to say, right? She was trained to say climate change isn't real. She just hadn't been trained enough to explain it or to give a nonsense explanation of how ecological degradation isn't something that we should worry about. Thank you, Robert, for the rose. Ooh, thank you, L33, for the hat. Yeehaw. But that was 8 years ago, and she's gotten a lot smarter since then. A lot of her podcast focuses on like parenting now. And recently she was willing to have Norman Finkelstein on her show, right? She had the Fink on, who's a fantastic pro-Palestinian academic, one of the best in the field, maybe the best in the field, because most of the Palestinian academics, like Ghassan Kanafani, who wrote about their own plight, have been slaughtered by Israel. But anyways, she had Finkelstein on her show, and Finkelstein appealed to Candace Owens' humanity. Finkelstein said, Candace, you're an expecting mother, right? You're going to have a child soon. A lot of your podcast or your show focuses on parenting. Israel has taken the lives of 13,000 children. Children who are born into an open-air prison. Children who are born into what essentially amounts to a concentration camp where they're not only prevented from leaving, but they're economically blockaded. Thank you, Robert, for the stickers, for the whatever that is. Thank you. And thank you for sharing and liking the live also. But he was explaining, how kids in Palestine have no hope. Kids born into this Gaza ghetto have no hope. Their only hope is to fight back or to break out of the apartheid walls, like what happened on October 7th, right? And he explained why so many Palestinians are willing to resist, why so many young men were willing to do that on October 7th, because they're born into a concentration camp, right? And ever since then, and you can tell that affected Candace Owens, that he actually got through to her. And similar to maybe following in the path of Tucker Carlson, she started to speak for herself a little bit, go against the Zionist talking points that other pundits at the Daily Wire like Ben Shapiro have been repeating incessantly. And that was enough for the Daily Wire to let her go, right? Which shows that the only way to keep a job in corporate media or mainstream media or billionaire-funded media is to toe the line completely. Completely. You step out of line a little bit. You step out of line 1 inch, and you go against the Zionist lobby, right? Or you disagree with your corporate employers on one issue, and they will kick you to the curb. They kick Candace Owens to the curb, even though she agrees with them on probably 90% of stuff. She wasn't doing or giving 2 thumbs up to Israel, taking the lives of 13,000 children and actively doing propaganda to help lie for them, so she lost her job. And that shows you exactly how corporate media works. And what's interesting is a lot of corporate media journalists are really arrogant, right? They'll mock independent media and independent journalists, and say they're conspiracy theorists, they're fringe, they don't have a real establishment job like me. But in the case of journalism and the news media, the worse you are, the better position you're going to get. The better journalist you are, the more you tell the truth, the less likely it is that you're going to be employed by corporate media, and eventually you'll be completely blackballed. So it's like this inverted reality where the corporate media journalists who sit at the top and get Pulitzer Prizes are actually the worst journalists, are actually, nothing but propagandists for corporations. When does the Moscow video come out? What Moscow video? Talking about what went down? Noah is interviewing Donald Corder today, who's a journalist that's stationed in Russia, so that'll be on our YouTube channel, Midwestern Marks. I don't know what to say about it. I would caution anybody against, because the U.S. is just saying, it was ISIS-K. It was ISIS, period, full stop. And, 2 years after the Nord Stream explosion, Biden and the U.S. are still saying, oh, we don't know who did it, when, everybody knows it was the U.S. and Ukraine who blew it up, right? So what I mean by that is it makes me skeptical when I hear Biden say, we know who did it right away. This is who did it, plain and simple, right? Because that, to me, seems like the U.S. trying to push a narrative, right? Whenever something like this happens, they just say whatever fits their narrative. Like when Nord Stream blew up, they blamed it on Russia. It's like Russia would not blow up their own pipeline, for one. And for two, Joe Biden already threatened to blow up Nord Stream. He said, I'm going to blow up Nord Stream if Russia doesn't do what I want. The European countries don't do what we want. Right? But the corporate media still immediately came out and said, Russia did this, or we don't know who did this, when it was, it's been revealed that it was the U.S. and Ukraine by multiple journalistic outlets, including Seymour Hersh. So when I hear Biden come out immediately after this event happens and say it was ISIS-K, I'm like, well, is he telling the truth, or is that what he wants us to think? Is that what the State Department wants everyone to think? And do they, anybody who asks questions about it then gets portrayed as a conspiracy theorist. And I don't doubt that ISIS was involved, but keep in mind, ISIS was fighting alongside with U.S. and Israeli-backed fighters in Syria, right? In the Syrian civil war, the Free Syrian Army was fighting together with the jihadist extremist groups like ISIS. So even if it was ISIS-K, completely, it was their attack, and I'm sure it seems like they were involved. It seems like we have enough evidence of that at this point. That doesn't rule out U.S. and Ukrainian involvement, right? So we don't have enough evidence yet, but I would be skeptical of anyone saying, Ukraine and the U.S. were for sure involved, because we don't know that at all. It could have just been isolated extremists. And I would caution anyone from saying, it's a conspiracy theory to say that the U.S. and Ukraine could be involved. Like, you don't think the U.S. would get in bed with a group like ISIS if it helps us attack Russia or attack our geopolitical enemies? Look at what they did in Afghanistan in the 70s and 80s, arming up Osama bin Laden's Mujahideen and portraying them as freedom fighters because they were fighting the Soviet Union, and that would later splinter into Al-Qaeda and these jihadist extremist groups that still persist today. So yeah, that's my take on it. We don't have enough evidence yet to know exactly what happened, but I would keep an open mind, and I definitely wouldn't rule out Western involvement. You good? What happened to your eye? I got elbowed the other day. I'm good. It happens in wrestling. Do you think we're going to World War III? Where is safe? If we do, nowhere will be safe, right? And there's a chance, right? We live in crazy times. Thank you, Counter APAC, for the rose. And yes, let's counter APAC. Excuse me. We don't know what's going to happen. The United States of America could completely collapse, right? We could collapse into a civil war. We could, with the next economic crisis, we could push Russia to the point where an actual hot war breaks out. We could push China to the point where one breaks out. Thank you, Marnie, and thank you, Moni. Marnie and Moni, thank you. Right, these are all possibilities. I hope that the workers of America rise up and seize power, in a very nice, clean, non-violent way. But, that hasn't always been realistic. A lot of times great empires and societies devolve and collapse, and it leads to these bloody revolutions. So that could happen in America too. Any of these things are possibilities. And, nowhere will be safe. Like, I hate to say it because I know everybody wants to keep their family safe and stuff, but the way to keep them safe is to organize the working class. To organize the working class so we can overthrow the psychopaths, the neocons and neoliberals who run our government, who are trying to push us towards World War III while America's economy and politics internally continues to decay and decay and decay and decay. Right? As long as those people continue to run our society, and as long as we continue with this rigid capitalist or monopoly capitalist individualistic system, the less safe we're all going to become, by the day. So I would say the only way to be safe is to fight, right? Not to hide, not to run away, not to tuck your tails between your legs, but to stand up and fight and to stand up and organize and stop saying, a better world is impossible. Stop saying, we can't have anything better than what we currently have, because we can. We just got to stand up and fight for it. We got to do that together. We have our power comes from numbers. Our power comes from working collectively as a working class. The ruling class needs our labor to survive. They need us to survive, but we do not need them. We do not need Wall Street. They are parasites who make money off of our labor. But if our labor stops, if we collectively together one day, 40% of the economy says, hey, we're not going to work, we're going to do a general strike, the whole thing shuts down. All their profit goes away. Right? So there's strength in numbers. Nobody can do it or can do anything alone. We can't enact any kind of change alone. Even in terms of voting for a president, right? Like, I worked hard on the Bernie Sanders campaign, but the question always was, what happens if we get Bernie in office? Sure, he has the executive office, and he can do things like executive orders that make people's lives nominally better and improve healthcare in small ways, but everything he tries to do, every socialist policy he tries to enact is going to be blocked by Congress. It's going to be blocked by the State Department, the Pentagon. Like, Trump even tried to withdraw a bunch of troops from all the U.S.'s foreign wars and their foreign occupations before he left office, and it was immediately blocked by the State Department. So there's only so much you can do from the presidency. And my point in saying that is it's never going to be just one person who saves us. It's never going to be one president who all of a sudden rights all the wrongs and fixes America. It's got to be a collective movement. And we have to recognize that our allies are working class people and our enemies are Wall Street, the big banks, the military-industrial complex, and the politicians who serve them. Right? Your enemies aren't your neighbor because of their race or their sexual orientation or what they think about certain social issues. Right? Your neighbors work 40 hours a week like you. They want better health care like you. They want to live more comfortably like you. They want to work less every week like you. They want to be able to take care of their families like you. Right? So we have to recognize that even though we might have our differences with other working class people, our material interests are the same. Our political and economic interests are the same. And that's in overthrowing the American ruling class, which is made up of giant banks and oligarchs. You should react to Socialism, an in-depth explanation by Ryan Chapman. I would love to. I've reacted to a lot of Ryan Chapman's videos in the past. I reacted to... Our YouTube channel has been demonetized, which sucks, because it makes it more difficult to get donations. But we figured it out now where people can give us direct donations via PayPal, which is actually nice because YouTube takes like 50%. But I've responded to Ryan Chapman's video about wokeism, where he basically says that wokeism stems from Marxism, and I explain the difference between, wokeism, meaning a hyper-obsession on identity politics, and Marxism, which is focused on economic class. And that's a really highly viewed video. People really liked that and reacted to it positively, because Ryan Chapman, I disagree with him on pretty much everything, but he is making, like, a well-thought-out, intellectually honest argument when he does his videos. So, yeah, that's what I like about responding to them. They're some of the best ones to respond to because, some propaganda videos are just straight garbage and they piss you off and you're like, what? This guy's just making stuff up. But Ryan Chapman's have been generally better than that. You are awesome. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you. Who will rule after we overturn the current ruling class? The workers. The workers. The only way to have true democracy is to have economic democracy and to have workers in control not only of the politics, but of the economy. Right? So that's the problem with liberalism. After the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, right, they said we're going to have political democracy. People's civil and political rights are going to be protected. Everybody's equal under the law. In some cases, they had to fight for that for a long time. But, the idea of everyone is equal under the law came out of the Enlightenment, or was popularized by the Enlightenment. And you have the idea of political democracy. We'll no longer be ruled by monarchs. We'll no longer be ruled by kings and giant landlords, but we'll be ruled by the vote of the people, the vote of the masses. But the problem is you can't have political democracy if you don't have economic democracy, right? Because if you have political democracy where everybody votes, but all the forces of production in society, all the land, all the tools, all the instruments of production, all the factories, all the vehicles and building equipment, if all of that is owned by a small number of people, by the capitalists, they're going to get way richer than everyone else through exploiting the labor of the workers, and then they'll use that money to control the political system, just like we have now, where they completely control it through lobbying and through campaign donations. And in 2011, in the U.S., the Supreme Court passed Citizens United, which essentially legalized political bribery. It said that, corporate donations to campaigns are protected by free speech. Them spending their money is just free speech. It's hilarious, right? So if you don't have economic democracy, if the entire economy is owned by a handful of people on Wall Street and Silicon Valley and Dubai and London, and everybody else is living under the rule of them, working for them 40 hours a week so they can accumulate more and more and more, you have no democracy at all. You have an oligarchy. You have the rule of the rich, which is exactly what capitalism has become since the Enlightenment. Right? It's become a domination of the oligarchs and the bankers. So what we need is economic democracy where not just political decisions, but economic decisions are made by the workers. Thank you for following, Sissy. Bro, updated United Nations. Check now. The empire expired 2 years ago. Cope harder. I wish you were right. Thank you, Moni, for the roses. What do I need to look up about the United Nations now? Everything will be back in square one with new ruling class over time. Historically, that has not been the case, Dan. Thank you, Al Harbi. Thank you. Historically, societies have drastically been altered through revolutions and through political struggles. No society has just gone back to normal. Even the overthrows of feudalism and the overthrow of the monarchs during the French Revolution, right? It led to capitalism. It led to this extremely flawed system, but it got rid of the divine right of kings, right? And it came up with these ideas like everybody's equal under the law. So these are improvements, right? Society has been moving forward. Capitalism does have a place in history, right? The Civil War in America got rid of slavery, right? It's not like chattel slavery has just come back after the Civil War. No, we fought to abolish it and it went away. It was replaced with wage slavery. It was replaced with capitalism, which isn't a great system, right? But it is an improvement over chattel slavery where people are owned and sold by commodities, right? And the revolution that we have, against capitalism, no, the next system won't be perfect. No, socialism won't be, a utopia. There will still be problems that need to be combated. But the idea that we can't improve this system because it'll always go back to normal, it'll always go back to the same thing over and over again, that's just ahistorical, right? We don't have the same system that we had 200 years ago, and that's because people have organized and fought against the system. They fought and demanded that we make things new and make things better. Whole lot of yapping going on here. Yeah, this is a TikTok live stream. So what we do is we hold our phones in front of our faces and then we talk to the audience, right? So you guys leave comments. I respond to those comments. I interact with them, right? So if you don't want to hear talking, or as you said, yapping, I would recommend not watching a TikTok live stream because that's like the whole point is for me to talk. So I hope that helps. Sent Team Bracelet. Thank you. Thank you. You have CTE. Definitely. Definitely got it. I'd rather have CTE than live my whole life indoors playing video games and commenting on people's live streams who I don't even like. Better to get CTE making something of yourself and racking up these All-American awards than to be a loser on TikTok. Even though I'm also a loser on TikTok. Thank you for that. The mustache. Thank you for the rose. Appreciate that, y'all. Socialist view on gun ownership. Where's that Marx quote? Sorry, I was looking up. Someone told me to look up something with the United Nations. I was Trying to make sure I didn't miss some big news story. But yeah, I believe that the workers shouldn't be disarmed. One sec, I can pull up the quote. I don't see anything. I don't see anything from the United Nations. Marks on gun ownership. Under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary. Now, I do think common sense gun laws make sense. I think like more stringent background checks or like a psychological evaluation could be good. But, even that, like the way the system works now, they're going to see someone like me who's a socialist who wants to radically change the existing economic structure of society. And they'll be like, oh, he's an extremist. Or they could say, he's an extremist, don't sell him a weapon. Even though, there are people who have threatened my life on the internet, people who have doxed me and shared my address on the internet. Like, there are tons of reasons that I have for wanting to defend myself, right? So it could be manipulated that way, but at the same time, I do think common sense gun laws make sense, and we have a hyper-gun obsessed society. But, I do think the workers should be organized and should, learn how to defend themselves. I've always believed that. And that's going to be necessary because, when we try and take political power, the ruling class will try and violently suppress us as a working class. So it makes sense to be prepared to defend ourselves. I don't know. I had some. Oh, yeah. And then, the problem of mass shootings is a huge problem in the U.S., but, like, all we ever talk about is guns. All we ever, I know that a shooting happened now because I'll log on to Twitter and I see every Democrat tweeting about guns. Guns. And then every conservative saying it's not the guns, it's not the guns, it's not the guns, it's not the guns, it's mental health, even though we don't want to do anything about mental health. Right, so we hyper-focus on the one solution of, decreasing the amount of guns to the point where it distracts us from other solutions. Like, let's look at, mental health for one, or let's look at how alienated we are. Let's look at, the prevalence of extremism in our society. Let's look at how violence is pushed by the media in order to justify imperialist wars of aggression, in order to justify the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, blah, blah, blah. They have to make people supportive of violence. They have to make people pro-violence. So what effect does that have, having a highly violent society that's constantly been on war? Thank you, Albie. Thank you. How about a lack of opportunities for kids? How about a lack of opportunities for kids, especially in low-income areas? Things like this. And Danny Shaw wrote a really good article about how we have this hyper-violent, hyper-propagandized society, and how that leads to these horrific, violent events, and how, the hyper-focus on the gun issue prevents us from bringing in other solutions. And, the conservatives will say, no, it's a mental health problem, but then what the hell do they want to do about it? Right? Do they want to build new mental health clinics in every community? Do they want to decrease funding for our foreign wars overseas and invest them in new mental health clinics and invest them in, social workers and social programs for kids? Of course not. No, they want to keep sending our money towards endless war and then doing nothing about the problem of mass shootings. Whereas the Democrats just want to use the mass shootings as a chance to push the gun issue, which fine, let's have that debate, let's have that argument about how to have rational gun policy and gun ownership laws, but let's not act like that's the only solution here. Do you think your views are considered extremist in the U.S.? Yeah. Not when I explain them. When I explain my views to people, they make perfect sense, and they say, oh, I've had people say, thank you, Joseph, I've had people say things like, Discord don't work, try copy and pasting it into your browser, then it should work. I've had people say things after I explain Marxism to them like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I just wish Marxism was separate from communism, right? I agree with everything that you said about, overthrowing capitalism and building a new economic structure. I just don't agree with communism. I think Marxism should be separate. I'm like, that is communism. Marxism is communism. Communism is just the struggle of the workers. It's the movement of society. It's the working class pushing for a new society, going to overthrow the capitalist class and build something new. That is communism. That is the goal of the Communist Party. The number one goal of the party, according to Engels, is the conquest of political power for the working class. Taking the state from the oligarchs, from the capitalists, and giving it to the workers. Right? And when you explain that to people, they support it, but they don't want it to be called communism. It's like, come on! Get rid of your friggin' McCarthyite propaganda. Please. I don't know if I should be wearing this shirt, but oh well. Maybe I'll switch. Yeah, I'm gonna switch. Just because one of the colleges I worked with in the past got mad at me for wearing their stuff on my streams. Because they're like, we actually don't endorse communism. And I'm like, what? What's your opinion on Prax Ben? Prax Ben doxed me. Hey, he made a video recently complaining that I said on Twitter that he has small D energy. I'm like, dude, you literally organized a campaign of people to call my job to get me fired multiple times. And then when confronted on it, you said it is a moral obligation to dox Eddie. He literally said that. It is a moral obligation to dox Eddie, to reveal his address, his phone number, his place of employment, and to try and make his life worse. All right, and I don't even know what I've done to the guy. I've debated him. I've made fun of him. I've roasted him like we do on TikTok. We're content creators, political content creators. That's what we do. We debate. And he represents what he believes is correct libertarianism, and I represent communism. Right, but apparently that's not enough for him. He has to come for my job. He has to come after me and dox me, which I've never done to him. Not only, because it's unethical. Why would you come after someone's job? Why not just engage with the arguments on their face, on their merits? If you believe in your arguments, you shouldn't have to come after their job. But two, because I don't have the time or energy to do that. I'm too busy doing other things. I'm too busy wrestling. I'm too busy doing Midwestern Marks, and I'm too busy coaching. Thank you, I Take Your Elephant. Right? To think that, let's take the time to look up where somebody lives, to hunt down where somebody lives and reveal that on the internet. Like, why? Thank you, I Take Your Elephant. And, there are things that people have sent me and told me about Prax Ben, right, that I know, that I could reveal to the public to try and destroy him, but it's like, why? Why would I attack this person, spend all this energy hating on this person and trying to make their life worse? I don't agree with him. I think he's a turd. I think he's wrong about everything, but ultimately, I don't wish horrible things on him. I wouldn't want him to lose his job if he had, stable employment. So I don't reveal the things that I know about him, the things that he's done in the past, the accusations that have been made against him. And if there had been similar accusations made about me being a creep, you can bet that he would pick them up and run with them. But anyways, that's enough talk about Prax Ben. Hello, fella. Your take on politics from the UK. Ooh, great question. I almost did a video about this the other day because it looks like Rishi Sunak is on his way out. The Conservatives are like, get out of here, Rishi. Nobody likes you anymore. We're tired of you being unpopular. Your rant about George Galloway and his election made you even more unpopular. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Thank you, YB. And, Rishi Sunak is terrible, but the Tories, which is if you don't know, the Conservative Party in the UK, like the Republican Party here in the US, they are talking about having Boris Johnson take over again. They're like, bring him back. Boris Johnson's like the Undertaker, grabbing Rishi Sunak and then rising out of his coffin, right? But it shows how desperate the Tories are in the UK, how desperate the Conservatives are, and some very interesting things have been going on, like George Galloway of the British Workers' Party, a socialist, anti-imperialist, pro-Palestinian candidate, winning his election by a landslide. He won his election, and then the second place person in that important UK parliamentary election was an independent candidate. So the Tories and the Labour Party, for the first time in years, got third and fourth place. Right? So the establishment parties in both countries are becoming less and less and less popular. And it's the perfect time for a party like George Galloway's British Workers' Party to offer something different. Say, hey, guess what? You don't have to vote for the two-party duopoly. You can vote for a party that's committed to you, the worker, and you, the worker alone. We're also committed to anti-imperialism because we know that U.S. and U.K. funding of horrible actions overseas not only lead to death and destruction of our friends and comrades internationally, but it hurts us here at home. Right? The U.S.'s infrastructure is crumbling as we're spending, sending another $14.5 billion to Israel and another $60 billion to Ukraine. Right? So it leads to decay here at home. Both parties are obnoxious Zionists. Yep. Exactly. And there's a very good chapter that I think this is an overlooked chapter. In Lenin's Imperialism. My favorite chapter in Lenin's Imperialism is the chapter about export capital. Thank you, Miranda, for the rose. Because I think that's the most overlooked chapter that actually explains what imperialism is and how imperialism materially extracts resources. And you can also understand how China is not an imperialist country if you understand how export capital works, because they're not exporting capital and siphoning out the resources. They're helping countries build up their own extractive devices and build up their own what's called equity, money that makes more money. So they're helping countries build up their own capital rather than exporting capital from Chinese multinational corporations to extract the resources. But anyways, there's another chapter that often goes overlooked at the very end called The Parasitism and Decay of Capitalism at page 99. And then, it's followed by the place of imperialism in history. So basically, Lenin says, as these corporations expand, as these imperialist countries, which are dominated by finance capital, big banks and multinational corporations, as they go abroad and extract resources and spend more and more money on the extraction of resources overseas and outsource jobs overseas, you'll see decay in the home country. You'll see decay of the workers in the imperialist country. And that's what we've seen in the U.S. Cost of living is going up, wages are stagnant, and more and more taxes are being taken out of our paycheck to pay for endless wars. Not only that, but you have the so it's not just the decay of capitalism, which we are seeing, but the parasitism of capitalism. Thank you, Meili Tafuna. Thank you for the galaxy. Woo! And that's because when finance capital dominates, when the big banks dominate, they make their money by charging us interest. They make their money by trapping everyone else in debt, and then charging them, making them pay back that debt with interest. So making money out of nothing, making money just by, extracting more and more value from the workers, which they get in the form of wages through selling their labor. So you have this incredibly parasitic and decaying economy that comes out of that. And that's what we have in the U.S. We have an economy dominated by the big banks, where 60% of Americans experience medical debt, 80% of us are living paycheck to paycheck, and most of us, almost all of us, have debt of some kind, or we're paying the banks through mortgages on our house or whatever else. Most of us experience some kind of debt, student debt, right? So it's a very parasitic economy where the richest people are making money by trapping us all in debt and charging us interest, while they take our tax money and use it on endless wars abroad. So it's a decaying society. It's a decaying system that cannot last forever, right? How it will blow up, and transform into a new system remains to be seen. I would argue that we can either choose socialism or barbarism. We can take control of the corporations. We can take control of production in this country, reinvest in infrastructure to create new jobs, reinvest here at home in building up our economy and end all the wars, bring all the troops home and stop spending money on maintaining over 1,000 foreign military bases. All right, we can do that, which is socialism, or we can devolve into barbarism and we can devolve into civil war and fighting, which could also eventually result in socialism, but it would be very sad. It would be very dangerous to live. But that's where, if capitalism continues to decay, as Lenin said, that's where we could end up. And a lot of people overlook that chapter. And by the way, on my YouTube channel, I have a full breakdown of this book, full breakdown and summary. Check that out on the Midwestern Marks YouTube. And thank you, Meili, for the 120 roses. That's awesome. Appreciate you. So you can check that out or join the Midwestern Marks Discord, link in my bio, where we also talk about this book all the time. But thank you, Rami. Be sure to join the Discord. But a lot of people overlook that chapter on the decay of imperialism because Lenin wrote this in 1917. So people are like, well, imperialism didn't necessarily decay and just go away.
the imperialist countries have continued to strengthen themselves, and after World War II, the U.S. emerged as the dominant imperialist country, and it's continued to strengthen itself and maintain unipolar global hegemony ever since. Thank you for that. So people have said Lenin's wrong. Imperialism didn't decay, but he wasn't wrong. Right? He was wrong maybe if you only look at it in the short term, right? If you say imperialism didn't collapse after 1917 or after World War II, thank you, Spooky Junk, right? But he's not wrong if you look in the long term. If you look at America today, if you look at the way that U.S. imperial hegemony, which means, the U.S. being the only dominant imperialist power, that's what hegemony means, U.S. imperialist hegemony and U.S. imperialist domination is decaying. Material conditions in the United States are decaying and getting worse and worse and worse for the working class, which, wasn't the case in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but that was because of the militant labor movement. That was because there were, hundreds of thousands of card-carrying communists in the U.S. demanding that we move towards socialism. There were there was a strongly organized labor movement. There was a militant union movement. In the 1940s, after World War II, there were more wildcat strikes than any other time in American history, where the workers, said, give us better pay, give us better benefits, or we're just walking out. And they would walk out. So that's how we got a lot of the things that, like the New Deal. Thank you, Barnden, right? The New Deal was FDR capitulating. He was saying, fine, stop pushing for communism and socialism. We'll do all these, social democratic policies that help the working class. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the different jobs programs. There are tons of national parks now and public areas in the U.S. that were created during the New Deal by these jobs programs, right? But that wasn't FDR being benevolent or Lyndon B. Johnson being benevolent and giving us all these things. That was the U.S. labor movement demanding those things. But so that made it look like the U.S. as the imperialist country, wasn't decaying. It made, for a while, the U.S. looked like this, shining city on a hill, this dominant unipolar capitalist empire that would never be defeated, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? You have Francis Fukuyama, who writes this book literally saying this is the end of history. There's going to be no more change, right? We have U.S. capitalism, U.S. liberalism is the dominant system. Its only, competitor, the USSR, has fallen. China is opening up to more capitalist markets. Capitalism has shown itself to be the greatest system. Imperialism didn't decay. Lenin was wrong, right? But 30 years later, 34, 35 years later, we see that that's not true. Imperialism has begun to decay. China has moved towards combating corruption and, recalibrated their system to be more socialistic, rooted out a lot of the free market stuff, and they've emerged as this global competitor to the U.S. economically, which, as a result, they become a political enemy of the U.S. The U.S. was very pro-China in the 90s when U.S. corporations were making money in China, and they still are, but now the U.S. recognizes that China is our greatest competitor, that China is the fastest growing economy on earth with a socialist system, a non-capitalist system. They're building, an alternative kind of society, and the U.S. views them as a competitor, as an enemy, and actually China is overtaking them. Right? So U.S. unipolar hegemony is coming to an end. Thank you so much for those gifts, comrades. Appreciate that. Thank you, Free Palestine, and friend with the Arabic name that I can't read who just sent 174 roses. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. All our funding at the Institute comes from you, the viewer, so appreciate it. Thank you, Sam. So now, 30 years later, after it looked like the U.S. won the Cold War, communism is coming back, socialism is coming back, and conditions in the U.S. are decaying, and the U.S. empire is losing control. There were 5 coups in Africa recently, where the governments were overthrown and the people demanded that Western governments leave, that Western military presence leave. You're seeing countries like Venezuela, Nicaragua, Bolivia, creating alternative systems to capitalism, creating socialist systems, and allying with countries like China, with countries like Iran, with countries like Russia, who are going against U.S. unipolar hegemony. And they're not all socialist countries, but a lot of them are moving towards a more socialistic economy, to get away from the dominance of the IMF, the World Bank, and the Western banking system, really. So imperialism has started to decay. Thank you, Tom Evers. And I think Lenin's analysis of the parasitism and decay of capitalist imperialism, thank you for the heart. I think that it was a correct analysis that we're now seeing. I had something else to say too, but I can't remember. I'll answer some questions now because I'm sure people have questions about China or whatever. How often do you go live? I've been going live almost every day because I'm trying to get more people to join our Discord server, which link in bio, by the way. If it doesn't work, copy and paste the link into your browser. So and since we got demonetized on YouTube, I'm really trying to build up the Discord, continue to build up the TikTok, even though it might be banned soon. Thank you, Free Palestine. Thank you, Bossman. But almost every day. Thank you, Vast Man. Be sure to like and share the stream also. But almost every day, what was I saying? And yeah, sometimes I don't. But I have been streaming on TikTok a lot more. I should have shared the stream on our Discord. I don't know why I forgot to do that. But thank you, Vossman. We should have movie nights or something on the Discord. That would be fun. That's a great idea to propose. I would be down, for sure. I got to go watch Dune 2 soon. Thank you for following. What do you think about the attacks in Russia? I explained this earlier, so I'll give a little bit of an abridged explanation. I would be careful jumping to saying that the U.S. and Ukraine were definitely involved, right? Because we don't know that. There's not enough evidence for that. And for sure, ISIS and ISIS-K is the name of the branch, was involved, right? But we know that the U.S.-backed forces and the Israeli-backed forces in the Syrian civil war worked with ISIS. And they worked with other jihadist extremist groups who were ISIS, basically ISIS adjacent, like Jaish al-Islam. And, there is evidence that at points there was even communication between the CIA or the Israeli Mossad and ISIS. So, I wouldn't put it past the U.S. or and their allies, we'll say, to work with a group like that. Thank you, Aaron Young. Appreciate that. So I would be careful jumping to saying that there was U.S. or Ukrainian involvement, but I would be very, very careful to ruling it out or saying, that's a conspiracy theory to believe that because the CIA and the U.S. have done it in the past. Right? In the 1970s and 80s, they're the reasons that ISIS is as prominent as they are. The toppling of Saddam Hussein's Iraq government allowed ISIS to become one of the dominant forces in Iraq. It allowed them to establish a base of support for the first time because the whole country was destabilized and thrown into chaos, where warlords were fighting for power. And ISIS was one of those warring groups. So not only that, but in the 70s and 80s, you had the U.S. through Operation Cyclone funnel, millions and millions of dollars. I think it was even over $1 billion into Osama bin Laden and the Mujahideen, because they were fighting the Soviet Union and because they were fighting the Marxist democratic government that they were trying to set up in Afghanistan. Thank you, Tracy Doll, for the heart. Thank you. So, people are acting like it's a conspiracy. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You think the CIA might have been involved with ISIS? Well, yeah, they've done it in the past 1,000,000 times. So, of course, I'm suspicious of that. So, we don't have enough evidence. Noah Kratchvik is going on our YouTube channel, Midwestern Marks, today. To talk about what happened in Russia with Donald Corder, who's a reporter, a journalist in Russia. Thank you, Kevin Brady. Thank you, Hassan. Yeehaw. So there will be more about that on the Midwestern Marks YouTube channel soon. Sorry, I'm putting away Lenin's imperialism so I don't forget. More about that. Yeah, but we just got to wait for more evidence to come out. But what I would say is keep an open mind, don't rule out anything, and be skeptical of everything you read in the mainstream media, especially theories that are dismissed as conspiracies. Do you hate LGBTQ+? No. What is that? People? Like people who have different sexual orientations, people from that community? Absolutely not. Human behavior doesn't change. That's so not true, right? The one thing we know about humans for sure is that we're products of our environment, right? A human growing up in a ghetto, right, in a place with no economic opportunities is going to develop a lot differently psychologically, physically, mentally, compared to someone who grows up in a place where they have tons of opportunities. Right? If I grew up in a place where wrestling wasn't a thing, who knows how I would have turned out? Who knows what kind of person I would have become? Right? It was because I had opportunities to surround myself with good mentors and surround myself with other hardworking people and surround myself with a supporting community and a loving community that affected my development and helped me turn into, at least a somewhat well-adjusted and somewhat hardworking and happy young man. If I would have grown up in different material conditions, there's no saying that would have happened, though. Right? Human psychology is entirely malleable. Right? Think about it. A human growing up in the 1600s, a peasant, right, or growing up in the 1200s under the king and under the rule of the church and the monarchy, they're going to have a totally different thought process about politics, about everyday life, about their goals in life, what they think about, what they care about. Oops, gotta verify my identity. All right, the psychology of humans has been different all throughout history, and it's because our material conditions are always changing. What's the best book to read about Marxism for beginners? I gotta grab some water. Maybe, probably the Three Sources and Three Components of Marxism by Vladimir Lenin would be what I would start with. Historical and Dialectical Materialism by Stalin is pretty good. Actually, that one's really good for beginners. Stalin wrote a lot of good stuff. People don't know that about him. But that one's really good. The Foundations of Leninism, I believe that one's by Engels. No, not by Engels. That one's by Stalin, too. Principles of Communism by Engels. That's the one I'm thinking of. That's the good beginner one. I appreciate and love what you do. Keep it up. Thank you, Matrix One. I will try. What do you think about Trump? Okay, let me drink my water because this will take a bit. Trump, like any politician, especially an anti-establishment populist politician, is a product of American material conditions. All right, Donald Trump emerged because for years we've had neoliberalism. We've had the outsourcing of jobs through free trade deals and other political policies that are pushed by the rich, by the corporations. We've had endless war, so the decreasing of jobs and the decaying of the economy here at home while we're spending more and more and more money abroad. And Trump came to power by speaking out against that, by saying, these wars were stupid, the Iraq War was dumb, it was a waste of money, we should have never been there in the first place. And these free trade deals that allowed all your jobs to get outsourced, those are stupid too, right? Now in 2016, in the Republican primary, and if you want to understand the rise of Donald Trump, the best way to do so is to watch the Republican debates from 2016. To watch how he stands in front of these corrupt Republican politicians and calls them out for their corruption, for their warmongering to their faces. And when he gets booed, when Trump gets booed by the audience, he says, that's their lobbyists and donors. Literally, he points to them and he says, they're only booing me because they're donors and lobbyists for the other candidates who I'm calling out. Because they're the ones, pushing, or they're the ones corrupting our politicians. Thank you, Random. Right? So he called out corruption and used populist rhetoric to organize a lot of Americans who are sick of our political system, who are sick of the endless wars and the outsourcing of jobs and blah, blah, blah. And two of the people who Donald Trump ran against in 2016 were Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. Two perfect representations of neoliberalism, of warmongering, and of corruption, one from each party. All right, so he called out Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush was one of the early frontrunners in that race, and he said, your brother, or is Jeb Bush George Bush's brother or cousin? Or I think they're brothers. Your brother did the Iraq War. Your brother is the one who lied to us and said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, got over 1 million people killed, allowed ISIS to come to power in Iraq, and totally destroyed the country just for oil and for the military-industrial complex. Thank you, Aaron Young. And he's like, George Bush has never apologized for this. I was against the Iraq War from the beginning, and mostly he didn't say, Trump didn't say, I care so deeply about the people of Iraq. He said this war was terrible for America, which it was. But either way, he railed against the political establishment. And Jeb Bush, who was this symbol of the American political establishment and of neocons and American warmongering that Trump railed against. And now, Trump did the same exact thing. He allowed the CIA to do a coup in Bolivia. He tried to coup Venezuela. He increased sanctions on Cuba. He did all sorts of imperialist stuff. So he lied, right? But his rhetoric was anti-imperialist. Then, after he won the primary, he went against Hillary Clinton. And remember all those jobs that were outsourced because of the free trade deals? Well, who signed NAFTA into law? Who signed the major free trade deal into law that got a lot of U.S. jobs outsourced, that deindustrialized a lot of the Midwest and the so-called Rust Belt, where Trump did a lot of his campaigning and where Hillary did almost no campaigning? Thank you, Pose. It was Bill Clinton, right? Bill Clinton signed that into law in the 90s, right? So Jeb Bush was a perfect example of American warmongering, and Bill Clinton was a perfect example of, George Bush was warmongering. Bill Clinton was outsourcing of jobs and neoliberalism and free trade deals. And Trump was running against two of their relatives who were running on the same policies, right? Who wanted to do the same thing. So, thank you, Milner. So, Trump railed against the American political establishment, and that's why his base is so dedicated to him or love him so much, because they see him as fighting corruption. They see him as fighting everything that the current American government stands for. Now, that's not what he is. Thank you, Milner. He didn't follow through on his promises. He wasn't actually this, anti-establishment crusader in office. Thank you. But his rhetoric was. And because of that, the establishment has done everything they can to lock him up and prevent him from running again. Thank you for the donut. Ooh, sweet. Thanks for the cool bunny ears. Love it. Trump is an anti-establishment sort of demagogue or charlatan. Right? He uses anti-imperialist rhetoric to rile up his base and get them to support him. He uses populist rhetoric. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, Pose. Pos.er. Piece of shit.re. You're not a piece of shit. It's just what I thought POS stood for. Thank you for the finger heart. Trump just represents, Trump is a product of American neoliberalism. He's a product of the people being sick of the American political establishment. And that's simplified by the fact, nothing shows that more than the way that he railed against the Bushes and the Clintons on the campaign trail, who he happened to be running against, which only helped him. Thank you for all the stickers. I hope people like that analysis of Trump there. Hope people found that to be truthful. I know a wrestler when I see one. You bet. Freestyle? Greco, actually. And I got practice in about 50 minutes. Thoughts on Jill Stein for the Green Party? She's better than the other candidates. I won't tell people not to vote for Jill Stein. I will tell them not to vote for Joe Biden or Trump. Who you got, Max Holloway or Justin Gaethje? Justin Gaethje. One of my friends wrestled Justin Gaethje in college, actually. Justin Gaethje beat him to qualify for nationals. And then Gaethje ended up placing. So I'll go with him. Have you thought about doing a video about the PFLP? Yeah, I want to. I've done videos about Ghassan Kanafani and other major members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Spot on analysis. Thank you, Sophia. What was I saying? PFLP, but technically they're considered a terrorist group, same as Hamas in the U.S., so you have to be careful what you say about them, or you can get banned or actually, in trouble with the law. So the ears match the mind. Yeah, my ears are actually my brain. It's got so big from reading so many books. I read all these books, and my brain actually started coming out through my ears. So that's what that is. Who you voting for? I'll probably vote for Karina and Claudia of PSL, even though PSL, I don't think they love Midwestern Marks. Whatever. I still think they're good candidates. Or maybe Cornell West. But it doesn't matter that much. The presidential election isn't that important. We just got to organize workers and organize communities and get people into socialist and communist parties that are actually doing good work. Why are you voting at all? Good question. Thank you, Majid. Maybe my time would be better spent just sitting home and playing TikToks or even playing Baldur's Gate 3. I almost joined the YPG ones. Have you heard of them? I don't know. What does that stand for? I might have heard of them. Voting is a sham? Pretty much. I don't blame anyone who says they don't vote. Not at all. Gosh, my phone is tripping out. Look at that. I need a new one. Thankfully, I have the iPad. Do you think that TikTok is getting banned? Hopefully not. It could. It definitely could. They're definitely tired of us making anti-imperialist, pro-Palestinian content on this app. Do you think Trump has a serious chance of winning again due to Joe Biden being a huge loser? Yeah, totally. Totally he has a chance of winning again. Joe Biden's terrible. That's one of the main reasons. Thank you, Talk 2. Thank you for the heart. But also the Democrats, they've tried to stop Trump from running, and it's only backfired. Right? The more the establishment goes against Trump and the more the corporate media tries to smear him, the more people like him because people don't trust the establishment or corporate media. Right? So there's and so many people were told in 2020 that we need to vote Biden because he's the lesser of two evils, and now we've seen what he's been, not the lesser of two evils. He's been the same neoliberal, warmongering politician, corrupt politician that he's been his entire career. And now he's responsible for facilitating and running cover for a literal genocide. So he's been a horrible president. He hasn't followed through on any of his promises when it comes to student debt and things like that. Thank you, POS.re. All he's really done is dump money into like activist groups and groups that are mostly, pro-Democratic Party. And said, look, I'm helping people. I'm being a progressive. I'm dumping money into activist groups. Like, those are just groups that are going to tell people to vote for you. But he's done next to nothing. So people aren't going to fall for that the same way this time around. They're not going to fall for we have to vote for this guy because he's the lesser of two evils the same way they did last time. Be sure to like and share the stream, please. He did forgive some student debt. Yeah, like a minuscule amount, though. And people like me, I still have like $100K in student debt. It's like if I have $100,000 in student debt and I'm fairly poor, and that student debt relief didn't help me, then who is it helping, right? Who is that minuscule amount of student debt relief going to? I don't know. I haven't even talked to anyone who had any of their student debt forgiven, but. Overall, he's done nothing. We have less rights than when he came into office. True. Yeah, and people are also like, we got to vote for Biden because of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was repealed under Biden because he didn't move to codify it into law. Thank you, user, for the rose, which he could have easily done. Thank you, John, for the heart. So, that one's just ridiculous to me. We need to vote for Biden to protect Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade got repealed under Joe Biden. Like, what? People hate capitalism because they're lazy. No, people hate capitalism because they're hardworking. But under capitalism, it doesn't matter how hard you work at your job. You're still creating wealth for your boss. You're still being exploited. So no matter how hard you work, the surplus is still going to go to them just because they own the means of production. So you can be like my dad, one of the hardest working people I ever met, someone who woke up at 6 a.m. every day to read his Bible and, went to bed by 9:15 or 9:30 every night after grading papers, right? Who only got like an hour of leisure time per day. But, now he's older and he barely has enough money to retire. And him and my mom are scrambling to save money so that they can, hopefully retire somewhat comfortably at some point. And, all that hard work that he did as a wrestling coach and as a teacher, all that effort he poured into the kids because he cared about the students and because he cared about his job and he cared about his athletes. So he went above and beyond. He didn't get paid for any of it. He didn't get paid a dime for it. And he has, I know we have friends and, or like family friends who are capitalists, who own capital, who retired at like 50, right? Whereas my dad is still working and, unsure of if he'll be able to save enough money to retire, especially if another recession comes. Right? So this system does not reward the hardest working people. It exploits the hardest working people and rewards the parasites at the top who aren't actually contributing anything to society or anything meaningful. And that's why people don't like capitalism. And I understand that you might think that, if like you're a high schooler or something, and you haven't worked like a 9-to-5 job or especially, tried to support a family off of one income or two incomes, right? That's where things get really ridiculous and tight in this country. The only reason that I can live somewhat comfortably is because of TikTok income in addition to my jobs, but also because I live alone, because I'm single, because I don't have kids. I don't have a family that I have to support. So, once you work 9 to 5 and you're busting your balls 40 plus hours a week to support a family, you'll realize that capitalism does not reward hard work. Everyone's busting their butt and getting exploited by the system, and 80% of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And, there's no just hard working your way out of that. You can scheme your way out of that, right? You can save money and invest in capital and try and become one of the exploiters rather than one of the exploited, but that's the only way. Why Marxism? Why not social capitalism? Because social capitalism doesn't work, and the only way to achieve changes in the system, the only way to get benefits for workers even within capitalism, is class struggle. It's through organizing the workers and demanding things like health care and better pensions and things like that, which is what happened in the U.S. throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. There was a really militant, strong labor movement that demanded all these better conditions for workers that have since been repealed and taken away since the era of Reagan and the last 40 years of neoliberalism. So that's Marxism, though. Marxism is the idea that we can only achieve these things through class struggle, and eventually, we can ultimately overthrow the economic system through class struggle and build a new and better one run by the workers. So that's the Marxist idea, and that's, it's a systemic outlook. It's a philosophical outlook that shows us how to achieve better conditions through organizing based on class, which class is determined by your relationship to the means of production. The owners of the means of production, the capitalists, are one economic class that lives through exploiting our labor, and then the working class is another economic class who sells their labor to the capitalists in a market. And these are all Marxist concepts. This is a Marxist way of looking at the world that accurately describes the world and accurately describes the capitalist system. So, and not just that, economic systems throughout history, and analyzes how they've changed and moved, and it's always been through class struggle. Class struggle's always been the engine of societal change. So there can be no so-called social capitalism without class struggle. The only way to get more social programs for workers is to organize, but under capitalism, those can always be repealed, which is why we need the conquest of political power by the workers. We need to build a socialist society, which is a society that works and operates for itself, rather than a capitalist society that ultimately works and operates for capital, for the accumulation and expansion of capital, which continues even if you have a few social programs for workers thrown in there. Just look at the European countries. Dang it, what else was I going to say? Oh, I had something good to say. Oh, yeah, follow the Discord. Join my Discord. If you're interested in Midwestern Marx and learning more about this stuff and learning more about class struggle and getting more involved in organizing and fighting back against the ruling class, join the Midwestern Marx Discord. The link is in my bio. It is attached to the link tree. If it doesn't work, if you have trouble joining the Discord, copy and paste it into your browser, and then that should work. Best work about Marxism for beginners. Principles of Communism by Engels is really good, and then 3 Sources and 3 Components of Marxism by Lenin is really good. Community organizing is our only hope for the future. Community and workplace organizing, yes. Yes. You gonna vote Cornel West? Probably. Turn the sign back on. There you go. We're glowing, baby. Midwestern Marx! Join the Midwestern Marx Discord! Otherwise, God hates you. God doesn't hate you. I'm sorry I said that. One sec. Let me change my lighting here, then. I'm going to open my window a touch. It's getting hot in here. It's getting hot in here. Anyone know? I have one of these because my friend gave them to me. I would never spend money on them or collect them because they're expensive and don't do anything. The Funko Pops. Thank you, Dank Nutrition. I just feel like if I collected Funko Pops, that'd be way too capitalist of a hobby, So... But does everyone know who this is, or anyone know who this is? What show he's from? It's one of my favorite animes of all time. Is the goal to bring legit Marxism to the U.S.? Yes, and to make a Marxist analysis of the U.S., right? So we need to organize class struggle in the U.S. That's the first job. We need to organize working class people of all colors, creeds, ethnicities, sexualities, whatever, just based on the fact that they're workers. We need to organize them and educate them about Marxism. But we also need to make a Marxist analysis of the United States. And this is why at the Midwestern Marx Institute we say that W.E.B. Du Bois is the father of American Marxism. Because before him, a lot of the Marxists were just copy-pasting Marx's analysis of Europe onto America. And Du Bois, makes... thank you, POS. Du Bois makes a more unique analysis, right? He has the same Marxist method, right? He looks at things through the lens of class struggle, but he's making a unique analysis of America. He says after the overthrow of the Civil War, they basically try to set up a dictatorship of the proletariat. They try to set up a workers' government with Reconstruction, where everybody's supposed to get 4 acres and a mule, right? But famously, Reconstruction fails. Thank you, Clarence. Thank you, Clarence Kennedy. And you have, the what Du Bois calls the counter-revolution of property, where the capitalists and the bankers and the economic elites at the time, and even the former slave owners, destroy Reconstruction and take total corporate control or capitalist control of the South. And the slaves become wage laborers. And you don't have this sort of workers' state come about that they had dreamed of. You have capitalism come about. And capitalism is what replaces chattel slavery. Thank you, Clarence. And thank you to everyone else who sent stickers. I'm having trouble keeping up with all of them. But anyways, he gives a very unique class analysis of the Civil War. And that's what we need, right? We need to use the Marxist method. We need to look at things through the lens of class struggle and see how different classes are fighting with each other and how their interests are aligned or not aligned. And the different results of that. And we need to make... we need to use that Marxist method, right? The dialectical materialist method or the historical materialist method. But it needs to be a unique analysis because Marx and Engels are very explicit that the class struggle takes a national form. In every unique place around the world, the class struggle looks different. The development of society happens and looks different. So as American Marxists, we need to make a unique analysis of our country and our country's conditions and our country's history. If we want to understand how to overthrow the existing system and build something new and better. Join the Discord. Thank you, Tism Gamer, for joining the Discord. Thank you so much. Thank you for following also, but of course TikTok might get banned. Midwestern Marx has been demonetized on YouTube. We've been banned on TikTok before, so the best way to keep up with us is to join the Discord. There's a link in my bio. Our Discord server is very active. You'll get updates when we do live streams. Tonight we're doing a live stream talking about the recent attacks in Moscow with Donald Corder, a journalist who's based out of Russia, good friend of ours. So, be sure to join the Discord. And there's also... you'll be connected with a community of like-minded people. You'll be connected with a community of anti-imperialists and socialists who actually want to get shit done, who actually want to start doing the work that communists are supposed to do, which is workplace organizing, getting involved with the unions, getting connections with different workplaces, but also community organizing, giving people or meeting people's needs, organizing communities and doing things like food giveaways or diaper giveaways where we organize stands giving people Marxist theory plus things to meet their material needs. Because we want people in this country to start thinking when my boss isn't there for me and when the government isn't there for me, the communists are there for me. The Communist Party is there for me. So these are the things we're going to start really... There's a lot of stuff in the works behind the scenes. Right, and this is the kind of stuff that we're going to start organizing and doing through the Midwestern Marx Discord server, really getting involved with community and workplace organizing and getting people connected. Be sure to join. Mutual aid, yeah. All right, y'all, I got to head out. I got to get ready for practice. This has been an awesome stream. Thanks for hanging out. I'll re-upload this stream to my YouTube channel, Midwestern Marx, so you can check it out there. But yeah, until then, please join the Discord. The link is in my bio. We'll see you over there. Keep reading, keep educating yourself, keep talking to people about politics and Marxism and class struggle and all that. Anti-imperialism, Palestine, free Palestine. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Peace.